I was a little worried about how I would respond to wealth.
Corner Tomkies. He spent 8 years growing and selling SupportNinja, his global talent acquisition firm. Now he focuses on buying great businesses to scale them for exit. This episode delves into Connor's exit experience, why he prefers to buy a significant portion of a business over angel investing, and how helping out his extended family members turned out to be the most rewarding use of his exit wealth.
The best companies have multiple offers to buy them. Like, the best companies have options. So then the question is, how are you providing value to those entrepreneurs? I look for companies that already have a fully built leadership team and have already found product market fit, and I'm just helping them scale faster. I think the best things that we've done with money have been helping family members, but it's also like something that you hear a lot of like caution about, feeling embarrassed about your past self, but also feeling like you're an imposter. Like, all these things are probably signs of growth. If I was to die tomorrow, I think I have lived a good life and I don't have many regrets at the moment. So I'm pretty happy with how things are.
Hi, Connor.
Hi, Anastasia. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Very good to have you on my podcast. Thank you for joining.
I'm excited to be here. The exit paradox. Let's jump into it.
Fantastic. So you sold your company SupportNinja 2 years ago. Can I take you back to that moment when you made the decision? And I want to hear why you decided to sell.
Yeah. So for everyone, I think the reason's slightly different. For us, we were hitting a point where we were hitting a lot of ceilings as far as like our growth, and the operations were getting so much bigger, and SupportNinja was doubling in size every year. And so it was a different company every year, and I had to be a different CEO every year. So that was a part of it, is that we needed a partner to help us scale to that next stage. And then another piece of it is there was 3 partners, and one of the partners wasn't involved in the business day to day. And so going through that exit process was a way for us to also have that partner find his exit and give him an option. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's always really challenging, is that the partners that you have going into it might not be the next set of partners that might help you get to the next stage.
No, absolutely. So now looking back to that business that you sold, do you ever regret starting it in the first place?
I don't think I do. Even the companies that didn't have the exit I hoped that they would have, it's hard to say that you regret it if you like where you are currently, right? And so for me, it's like, even if you don't have that desired outcome financially, you still learn so much going along that journey, and you still met so many different people that help you get to where you are, that it's hard to say that you regret that, right? And so would I have done things the same way? Probably not, but hard to say that I regret it.
What would you do differently this time?
So I kind of have to separate it out into 2 different parts, right? So the first part is like, what would I do differently if I was to sell a company in the position that I am in now, which is a little bit different, because once you have that financial security and you've gone through that exit process the first time, you're able to have more flexibility. You're able to time your exit better. You're able to plan better. And so that's completely different. And that's why I encourage people to like go through that process once, because then you're a different entrepreneur after that first time. But if I was to go back and do it before, I think it's important for partners to kind of sit down and talk about what that entrepreneurship prenup looks like if you were to split up as partners, or what happens if someone finds something more interesting and they want to do something else. I think having that conversation is very important, and I do that with all my partners that I work with now.
Would you agree that building a business is a traumatic experience for a founder?
Yeah, it can be traumatic. I think all of us have some scar tissue. Yeah, for sure. I think it's hard because there's so much energy and so much of yourself that you put into that business. And so if that business goes through something, then you're so tied to it that you, in a way, also go through it. And so it's also hard to have that much responsibility or be that responsible for so many people. And if your company gets to a size where you don't know everyone by name, there's also that kind of like you're responsible for people that you can't directly take care of. And that's kind of stressful in a way. So I think a lot of the trauma is either tied to like not being able to be the person that I want to be for everyone inside the organization, if that makes sense. but I also, I'm not sure if it's fair to call it trauma. I think it's just more like some scar tissue, like take some hits and then you keep on moving.
I guess that's where scars normally come from some form of damage, right? The reason I was curious about it is because I wonder if you then went through any kind of healing process after you sold, and if you felt the need to do that.
So whenever I talk to other post-exit founders, a lot of them took some time off in between their companies to take time to reflect. And I've heard different amounts of time kind of tossed out there, like a couple months, 2 years. I didn't take that time to like reflect too much. I think I was kind of dealing with my stuff and my transition while moving, and I think that's how I try to feel better is almost immediately I started building landing pages and working with potential partners, and I spun up like a venture studio, and people reached out to me to invest or buy their business. And so it was just more like I was excited about what the next idea was, and I was excited to keep on moving. But probably for 6 or 8 months, it's been like transition where I'm like, have good days and then bad days, or I wake up in the middle of the night being like, oh, I should have done this, or I should have handled this relationship differently. So I think I'm still dealing with it, but I'm probably like Elsa and Frozen, and I'm concealing, not feeling.
So if you look back at these 2 years, what would you do differently if you had to go through them again?
I probably would have taken a little bit more time. I think that probably would have been best. We went on a trip to Italy, and we were able to relax there. And then we came back, and my wife, I was playing Zelda on the couch behind me, and she's like, is that what you're going to be doing? And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, I guess not. I should get to work. So I wish I probably took a little bit more time.
On the couch.
No, not at all. No. And I kind of respond well to that. I kind of respond well to people like teasing me or kind of pushing me to do something a little bit differently. And so I wish I probably took a little bit more time than that, though. And I think this is hard. But whenever you're transitioning away from the business, like the thing that you carry away from that experience most is the relationships that you have inside that business. And I wish that I did this to an extent, and I wish I did this even more, I wish I connected more with people and spent more time with them, and was able to, like, it's never too late, right? But I wish I was, it's important to be a very intentional friend and peer and colleague to the people if you're leaving a business, because you might work with them again, or you might, those relationships are very important,
So you regret you didn't take more time between businesses because you could have spent that time developing those relationships.
Yes, I think that's exactly it.
How much time do you think you should have taken?
I think for me, probably a couple months would have been good. And that's on the lower end of the spectrum, I think. I think we have like a knee-jerk reaction of like we have to move or we have to be building something. Or if you're not moving, you're standing still. And sometimes it's good to strategically hold still. It's good to strategically stop and take a moment, or else you might jump into the wrong thing, and you might be in that wrong thing for the next 3 to 8 years, So it's good to take that pause.
Do you feel now you're in the wrong thing?
I think I was relatively lucky in that I have a lot of partners that I really respect and enjoy working with, and I actually enjoyed what I'm doing now more than I was like 2 years ago. And so I really enjoy that piece. I really enjoy working in multiple businesses. I really enjoy seeing them grow and develop and expanding on different ideas relatively quickly. And it's harder if you're working inside a bigger company, and SupportNinja had thousands of employees. It's really hard to move quickly, and also you feel guilty working on new ideas because you feel like you should be working on, you need to be working on that company 100%. Like you owe them that much, right? As the CEO of that company. And so I do enjoy the freedom of where I'm at now. I don't have a lot of regrets. I think that there were a couple things where like things didn't work out right away, or you try to do like you're looking at a distressed business and you're trying to figure out how do you pivot it. And luckily enough, we made some mistakes, but we were able to move on relatively quickly. So that's a win.
So what is it you're doing now?
So I started a venture studio called Operator Equity, which the idea is almost like an anti-private equity firm where it's entrepreneurs are essentially the LPs in the business. There's not a horizon as to when you have to sell. And I focus mostly on fixing cap table issues. So like what I was talking about before, helping partners try to figure out what is the right next steps for them. And then Operator Equity is in a position to help those companies kind of like fix that cap table or figure out what the right steps are to move forward. And so I did that. I became an EOS implementer, if you know the Entrepreneur Operating System. So that way, whenever I buy a business, I can help implement a operating system inside that business and help them grow their sales and their operations departments. And right now, Operator Equity has 6 logos underneath the umbrella, so it's been growing pretty rapidly. We just announced that we bought a business today, which is exciting. We set out to make essentially like a deal box, talking about like what are the type of companies that we're interested in buying, what are the characteristics of them. And so as far as valuation, we're looking at between 5 to 20 million. We find that's kind of like the in between of like small to medium size enterprises, like where they're just kind of hitting their growth stage. 25% margin, agency, SaaS, technology services businesses mostly. We're looking for a motivated founding team, probably a 2 to 6 times on EBITDA, and preferably an EOS operating system behind the scenes. So like investing in other companies that also run on this operating system makes it easier to speak the same language and to incorporate them into the fold. So essentially EOS stands for the Entrepreneur Operating System. It's based off this book by Gino Wickman called Traction. And it breaks down the business into 6 key components. There's like a people component, a data component, process, vision, traction, and it breaks down like, here's the different stages of development in these 6 different areas, and here's how you can implement them in a very clear and concise way. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, we just start solving problems and we don't necessarily know what that next stage of development looks like. And so I like the EOS model just because you can hand someone a book, you can hand a manager a book or an entrepreneur a book, and you can know that you're beginning to speak the same language essentially.
Yeah, it's like the Lean Startup book was used for a while in a similar manner.
I think that might have been one of the first books I read on entrepreneurship back in the day. Is that Eric Ries that did that book?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
It's been a while. Eric Ries.
Why did you choose EOS as kind of the structure for your system?
Yeah, so I self-implemented EOS at Embark, which is a dog genetics company before SupportNinja. And it went all right. And then at SupportNinja, we needed a little bit more help because we had so many people. So we had 3 EOS implementers, some even in different countries. And we implemented it because we had so many managers, so many different levels, because we had so many people. And it was that point of being able to hand them that 2-page business plan, and have everyone aligned in core values and everyone understand what our 1, 3, and 10-year plan would be and what our go-to-market strategy is. Just being able to hand them that plan in like a clear and concise way and have them run their meetings the same way really created a really cool ecosystem where everyone inside the company could see what was happening on a leadership team level, on a director and a VP level. It's really kind of cool. Like if you look at 150 different teams with team managers all doing meetings the same way and speaking the same language and understanding where the company's goals are, that's a pretty powerful alignment thing.
So basically you tried it yourself. You saw it work in 2 companies, not even one, of different sizes. And now you believe in the system because you've tried it and you think this is sort of the value you can bring into those companies that you're buying to help them 10x or whatever your expectation is from them by the time you, I assume, exit them at some point.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it is whenever people are, the best companies have multiple offers to buy them. Like the best companies have options. So then the question is, how are you providing value to those entrepreneurs? And that was something I was struggling with. And that's what I liked about EOS. But then the other side of it is that I think CEOs and entrepreneurs are also looking for what their growth plan is as an individual, as a person. And what's cool about operator equity is that once we invest in a business and they have an event, they have like a lot of cash that they didn't normally have access to, they then get to act as an LP in the next deal. So then if they find something that's interesting to them, then they can co-invest and do the next one. And so in a way, they're growing as an entrepreneur and they're getting more exposure into different industries. And I think that's pretty important to me, is that they're bringing in that skill set into that ecosystem and they're helping engage with other founders that are going through similar things. It creates a really cool dynamic.
So what's your ambition with operator equity? Where do you want it to go?
I think for me, I like the idea of entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs, and the idea of not having a shorter term investment horizon. I like the idea of kind of seeing what nature the company takes on its own, right? Like what's the best thing for that company and for that entity? Is it scaling for 5 years and then selling, or is it scaling for 20 years? Is it doing an ESOP? Is it doing a public offering? Is it I enjoy seeing that kind of piece, you know? And there's not like a hard requirement as far as like we have to hit these milestones or we have to acquire these companies within this time frame. So I really enjoy that there's a little bit more flexibility kind of baked into the model, where with traditional financing options and raising money from LPs, they need to set an expectation as to when that exit's going to occur. And usually it's within that 3 to 5 year window. And that might not necessarily be the right thing for the company. So from my end, I'm looking forward to seeing like how these companies flourish organically.
So on a personal level, how did you come up with this idea as opposed to building another company, just one company, or doing something else entirely?
I think there's a difference in mindset between being a director and an executive, and being an executive and a founder. And then logically, the next step is being a founder versus an investor. And so for me, I was like, what is the type of investment I could be the most excited about? And how can I amplify myself similar to how I amplify myself as a CEO or as a founder? You hire people in a kind of like a family office venture studio model. You're amplifying yourself, but on another level. You're amplifying yourself on a organizational level, and you're working with multiple organizations at the same time. And I think that's pretty powerful.
So when you worked on your own companies that you founded or co-founded, what it is that you love doing, what kind of activity you love doing most?
So have you heard that 0 to 1 Peter Thiel kind of book where it's talking about the joy of that initial creation element?
Yeah.
So if there's 0 to 1, and then let's say 1 to 2 is like the mid stage, right? And then let's say 2 to 3 is like scale. I tend to enjoy 0 to 1, which is like the inception of the idea, the creation of the initial team, and then the launch. And then 1 to 2, I don't enjoy so much. So that's like the small to medium size enterprises where like you're scaling, but you don't have all the team and all the resources in place. And I'm like, that's not great. And then I really enjoy the 2 to 3. So you have like a built out leadership team. So there's a little bit of a gap in the middle that I don't particularly enjoy. And so I really enjoy in the like startup ideation and launch, that creation of something. And then I enjoy seeing that thing hit the growth stage or hit that scaling element, which is more sales and marketing oriented.
So sales and marketing is what would be interesting for you in that 2 to 3 stage.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you buy companies, do you buy them when they're already in that 3rd stage?
Exactly, yeah. So I look for...
to a more interesting one as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's been interesting. So some of the companies that I'm actually working on, companies inside this family office, inside this venture studio that are incepted and launched inside the ecosystem. But the companies that I'm acquiring right now have gone through that scaling challenge and has found that product market fit and are in that quote unquote 2 to 3. They're in that growth stage. I look for companies that already have a fully built leadership team and have already found product market fit, and I'm just helping them scale faster.
So do you feel you may be missing that sort of creative channel that your business was for you, probably at the very early stage, if you only focus for the foreseeable future on companies that are more mature?
Yes and no. I think that so for example, I'm launching a podcast, and that's one of the things that we were talking about, right? And so that idea of like, what's the premise behind it, and how are you providing value to the listener, and what's going to be the name of the podcast? And so I get to exercise creativity in that way, and I'm learning so much because I'm immersing myself in these different companies, and we're also launching additional services and products. I don't feel like I'm limited on the creativity side. I feel like I'm actually able to be more creative, if that makes sense, and solve more problems that are more varied.
Oh, fantastic. So for how long you've been doing it now, your operator equity business?
So I sold SupportNinja 2 years ago. I stepped down as CEO of SupportNinja in July to join the board, and then I've been working on this for less than a year. So it's been a relatively tight time frame and a lot happening pretty quickly.
I'd love to talk to you in 5 years or 6 years to see how this idea develops. But it sounds like, it ticks all the boxes for what you think you want to do in this next.
Let's check in 5 years. I might be like, Anastasia, I don't know what I was doing. I am losing my mind. I don't know what meeting I'm entering into.
Fine, right? I'm sure you.
Yeah, it's fine.
A lot to the process, or maybe right. you'll be very grateful that you started it. So I would be continuing on sort of your personal journey. How you dealt with the loss of identity after you sold SupportNinja.
I think it's a little hard whenever you look at. There's a little bit of an ego, and it's not always healthy. Where it's like with SupportNinja, there's thousands of people involved, and they all help make that company, right? And everyone has their fingerprint on it. And it's hard to sometimes look at things that might have like your fingerprint on it and see it take on like it go in a different direction. And that's a little hard to see, right? Either you are growing a certain way and then you're no longer growing a certain way, or see things being done differently. And that's a little challenging. The hard part though is that nothing really lasts, and that it's almost like you're building a sandcastle, but everyone knows that your sandcastle is going to be washed away whenever the tide comes. So if nothing lasts, then it's like the only thing that you have is that time that you had with that company. And I think that we made something pretty cool, and we made a good environment for the employees, and we did a lot of good for the community. And it's really cool to see something that, on the flip side, it's really cool to see something that you helped make and see it flourish and see it do something that you never thought it could. So to answer your question, I'm still navigating it.
I guess what I was trying to understand is how much that search for a new and clear identity was important in your decision about what you were doing next. So, for example, for me, when I sold my company, I was like, oh my God, I need to have some kind of, name or title or identity attached to me. And the first one I found was angel investor. And I went ahead and, invested in a bunch of companies just to understand years later that it was coming from a completely wrong place, that I didn't do my work properly. And I just wanted to be someone in the ecosystem because I felt I was suddenly kind of kicked out of it. So I was just curious if you can relate to that, or you didn't have as much ego as I did at the time.
No, I think I have it bad. I think that it's kind of like that dinner party question when people ask you, what do you do, right? Mm-hmm. Which is inevitably like the first or second question. And for almost everyone, it's like, your work, right? It's your title or the company that you made. And then after an exit, you're like, well, what's that answer for me? It's not as clear cut. It's not as clean. And in some ways, I think that is the wrong question to begin with, right? Because like that's same thing as like people are trying to figure out how you fit into their world, and you want to understand how you fit in their world, right? And so yeah, I definitely struggled with that. And there's this guy that was interviewing people during like Woodstock, and he was asking a guy like, so what do you do? And he's like, I'm just living, man. And I'm like, oh, I can relate to that. I'm like, I'm spending time with family and with friends, and like my title isn't all that I am. But on the other hand, I was very quick to be like, I'm going to be launching these different things, and I'm going to be running these different companies. And I still don't know what I say whenever I'm at dinner parties is, do I talk about one of the companies that I'm working on, or do I talk about the podcast that I'm launching, or do I talk about this community that I'm trying to build for entrepreneurs? Like it's very different, and I don't know what the right answer is. So maybe I should just pick a different answer every time.
I guess you'll come up with some formula over time. So how your thoughts about money and wealth changed from before you exited your business to now?
I was a little worried about how I would respond to wealth, and so I took some chips off the table. I took some cash out of the company when it probably would have been better to keep it all in, right? Because it's growing fast. Partially so I could learn about money. So I definitely kind of view it a little bit more as like an educational process, and I'm definitely learning like what things I enjoy and which things I don't. I think it's definitely helpful to work with other people that have sold their business that are navigating the same thing, so that way you guys can share some lessons learned. That's definitely been helpful for me.
Yeah.
As far as money is concerned, I think I have a bias towards things I can control versus things I cannot control. So I would much rather have like a company where I own a meaningful stake in versus a angel investment where I don't have as much of a clear image. What was that answer for you?
It took me years to understand what wealth actually meant for me. There was a lot of confusion. I made lots of mistakes. And I think it wasn't until I got some clarity about my purpose when I realized that I want to think about my wealth as leverage for my purpose, in addition to creating enough stability in my life so I can actually be free to do what I want to do, which is also related to my purpose. But that was a long journey. At first, there was a lot of shock. There was a lot of fear as well, because I didn't come from much money. And when I did get the money, I suddenly developed very quickly this anxiety about my incompetence. And when I started angel investing, that didn't help, because I ended up losing quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
Didn't do very well there. And I didn't enjoy dealing with all sorts of advisors and private bankers either. So it was quite bumpy for me. It was also very sudden. Like I didn't have any money, then I had too much to be able to manage. So it was a bit painful. Hence my question. I'm very curious about how other people go through this.
So the night of the first exit, my wife and I were about to go to bed, and my wife, like in the span of like 10 minutes, figured out how to spend all the money that we had made. She's like, we're sending this much to family members, we're doing this much to here. And I was like, it took like 8 or 10 years, and in 10 minutes it was all figured out.
Exactly.
And I think it's funny because it is everyone has an interesting relationship with money, and understanding how to going from like an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset, and like an offensive kind of like, I say offensive as in like you're looking at how do you generate wealth versus defensive, where you're looking at how do you protect, very different kind of mindsets. And
Talking about abundance mindset, I found that it was much easier for me to have it when I didn't have money. It was much harder when I did. It should be the other way around. But it's very easy to accept it when it's just theoretical and you have nothing to defend.
oh, for sure, 100%. And I think the best things that we've done with money have been helping family members, if that makes sense. But it's also like something that you hear a lot of like caution about, which is kind of interesting in that like you can hear about like money messing up families and relationships and trusts and that have gone wrong. But on the other hand, if you're able to like help your grandparents or your parents with like health issues or help family members move in with other family members or help with a down payment on like a house, like those things have a pretty big like lasting impact on your lifestyle and your family and like helping kind of set the course. So I think that's something that like we're happy that we've done with the financial security, is be able to extend that financial security safety net to more people, which is helpful. But on the other hand, you also hear like a lot of stories of caution about that I haven't yet experienced.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most common questions actually that come up when you talk to people who exited businesses or came into wealth recently. How do you say no to people with whom you don't want to, to hurt the relationships with? It's not easy.
Yeah, I don't have the answers on this one at all. I think similar to you, I want to figure out how to provide financial stability and then align money and purpose as much as possible. And I'm still navigating that.
So your wife immediately knew how to spend the money.
She has a gift.
Did you two agree on the plan? Or it caused some disagreements in the family?
No, I say this lightly because like she had all of it allocated it, and none of it was in like it was almost mostly like the family members, like 10% to each family member or something like that. And but like whenever we talked about it, and we talked about like long-term appreciating assets and different investment things, and like also that's like if I want to buy companies or do other things, like that's kind of like you're doing it from what you made in a previous sale. And so she probably had it allocated in 10 minutes, and then we probably walked it back in 10 minutes. So it wasn't it was a healthy discussion.
Generally, would you say your exit had some impact on your marriage?
No, not so much. I mean, so for us, we've been together since high school. So we've known each other since we were 13, and we lived in like a 300 square foot apartment together, then an 800 square foot apartment together, then a house. And so like, I would say like it's the difference between like where we eat and what trips we go on and what we're able to do, but not so much on our relationship, just because we've seen each other through so many different stages in life.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because obviously, the rate of divorces is quite high after when people sell businesses. So I'm happy to hear you avoided.
Oh yeah, that's not a happy thought. So far, so good.
Good. Let's keep it that way. So would you say your definition of success has changed since you sold your business to today?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, so whenever you're talking to other people that have sold their business, and like throughout becoming an entrepreneur, it's interesting because if you're working inside a bigger corporation, you understand where you are in the hierarchy and how you're progressing in your career. And as an entrepreneur, the only thing that you can do is kind of like sideways and be like, where are these other entrepreneurs? And like, how am I progressing? How am I learning about where I'm at and what is successful? And there's always going to be people that are bigger than, that run bigger companies than your company. And there's also like some founders that are very public about what they're doing, and like there's some that are not. And I was in a camp where I had my head down and I never really looked up and saw what other people were doing until after I sold the business. And then I'm looking up and looking around and and learning about other people and their stories. And so I think my definition of success has changed because now I'm talking to entrepreneurs like 5 or 10 times a week, and I'm having these like relationships with them, and you come across people and you really, I think in my head, I'm definitely learning that we're all just people, and some of us figured out some things and some of us didn't. And my definition of success and where I kind of fit into it is a little bit different now. And so yes, my definition has changed. If you were to ask me to define it right now, I probably couldn't. But I know
which is very understandable, because you must be going through a big transition right now. You know, statistically, it takes 10 years to get to clarity and to get over post-exit crisis. Obviously, you know, some people have it harder than others, but it's 10 years.
10 years. I have to wait that long? That's rough.
You don't have to wait.
All right.
You better get to work. It just happened before people find it.
And that's the average.
Average, yeah.
Yeah, so I could either be 1 year and I could be on one side of the average, or I could be like 80 years old and figuring it out.
But you know, I've been obsessing about this whole post-exit thing for 13 years now, and I have to agree that after about 10 years, you look back and you clearly see patterns. And when you talk to other people who exited more than 10 years ago, they agree on those patterns with you. But of course, when I was just 2 or 3 years after the exit, it's not possible to see these patterns. You always think, oh, now I already figured things out. And I was writing a blog at the time, and I remember that, 2 or 3 years after my exit, I was really thinking that I was sharing my amazing wisdom with the world. And now looking back at that wisdom, it's quite embarrassing, because obviously, I've moved on quite a bit. So yeah,
oh my God,
10 years.
Isn't that true for any healthy person though, that you're embarrassed by the person that you were, right? If you're not embarrassed by who you were in the past, you're not growing.
Yeah, it's a good sign that you've moved on.
Have you ever looked at your early Facebook posts, like your very first ones, and you're like, oh, what was I thinking? Like, why did I post that? It's a little embarrassing.
Now you gave me the idea. I'm gonna do it later today.
It's a little cringy. But yeah, to your point, I hope that I'm embarrassed by who I am now, a year or two from now. As cringy as it is, it just means that the progress is happening somewhere.
Exactly. So let's talk about how your sort of thinking about purpose evolved over time. Like, why did you start your first business?
I had wanted to do prosthetics and work in the healthcare space for as long as I can remember when I was little. And oddly, my wife wanted to do business stuff. So she was doing like DECA and wanted to be like an entrepreneur. DECA is like a business contest in high school. And I was doing like health science technology and like interning at hospitals. And then in university, we swapped, right? And she's now a doctor and I'm now an entrepreneur. So we swapped gears, our wires got crossed. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into architecture briefly, and then realized that it's kind of hard to make a living and you're doing a lot of permitting. And I had this idea around like setting up campsites before people got there. So I would be renting out like equipment to them and setting up the campsite for them. And that would be like a way to make money in college. And you're making money off the rental plus like the setup and whatnot. And I made like a website, and I thought it was kind of cool that like the website gave this idea credibility, like because there's like this digital storefront at the time, which is easy to do now, but harder to do then. It was like you created something. And so I thought that process was really fun. And then from there, I made a company called Delegate It, which was like an omni-channel kind of like back-end service. And then from there, embark in SupportNinja. So it's just more of like each thing led to another thing, and it happened pretty organically.
Okay. So do you have a sense of purpose now?
A sense of purpose now? Oof. I think I really enjoy the idea of community, and I really enjoy the idea of bringing people together. So I think that brings me the most joy. So if I'm focusing on one thing, I'm probably focusing on that.
Have you ever felt guilty about your financial success?
No, not so much. I think it's important, at least for me, to understand like what role I play and like the different stakeholders I work with. Mm-hmm. And I think that like whenever we were looking at like wage rates for all the employees, we pay above market rate. We invest back into the schools and the orphanages and the areas that we work in. And we, as far as like the stakeholders and the different companies that I ran, they all did really well. And so, and for all the employees, we did a lot of like option grants, and people were able to start businesses from when the company sold. And so it's really cool to see that happen. And so, not a lot of guilt, no, but you have me thinking. And so if I think about it long enough, maybe I might find something to feel guilty about.
Okay. If you felt guilty, you would know it. But it's great. It's a perfect answer. You avoided feeling guilty because you did all these amazing things, giving back and taking care of other people. Makes a lot of sense.
Some of the ways that we structured the exit is that a portion of the money that we would have made goes to the employees. And so that really helps with like making sure that all the stakeholders are benefiting from that exit and that experience. But you were asking about imposter syndrome?
Another popular term that flies around in the post-exit founder community.
Yeah, especially when you talk to other post-exit founders. You're like, well, what am I doing in this group? Because some people have done some amazing things. So yeah, I feel imposter syndrome all the time. That's probably another thing that's healthy, though, like feeling embarrassed about your past self, but also feeling like you're an imposter. Like all these things are probably signs of growth. If you didn't feel that way, you probably aren't moving forward.
Yeah,
you're probably in the wrong room.
Feeling those unpleasant feelings motivate us to move forward, to grow into that person we want to be, but feel we are not yet. There's definitely a positive way to look at it. I agree.
Isn't that a hard balance, though? Because you're looking at other people and you're evaluating yourself in relation to them, and that's how you create the imposter syndrome. And that's also the motivation and the driving force moving you forward and driving you. But on the other hand, that's also causing you to have a lack of happiness and a lack of fulfillment. So
true.
It's like, have fun walking that tightrope.
Yeah, but imposter syndrome can also come to you from you comparing yourself to whomever you want to be yourself, right? It doesn't have to come from you comparing yourself to other people.
Yeah.
But wherever it comes from, it's definitely a source of suffering, and suffering does push us forward, but temporarily reduces the level of happiness. That's for sure. But that's how we're designed to be, right? We move forward because we have
for sure.
kind of desire, and we suffer until that desire is satisfied.
Yeah, and at some point we will find our Zen or take on SSRI and find our happy place. So we'll figure it out.
Maybe. I'm curious about how your parents defined your success, whom they wanted you to be.
I don't think my parents and my in-laws understood my companies or what they did too much in the beginning. I think that they're happy now, but I think they're probably still scratching their head and still being like, what is Connor doing and how do these pieces kind of fit together? I was having coffee with my mom, I want to say like 6 or 7 months ago, after stepping down, and I was outlining, here's operator equity, here's the companies that we're buying, and I was outlining on the table, like with salt shakers and sugar packets, like how these companies are going to support each other. And so I think that they're happy for me, but I think they are still figuring out how I fit into this world and what I'm doing.
So you don't have kids yet, but I know you have been thinking about how to raise them. Would you like your kids, hypothetical kids that you don't have yet, to become entrepreneurs?
Oh, geez. that's an interesting question. Hypothetical kids. I don't know. Well, I have a hypothetical son, and he's great. The hypothetical daughter, not so great. I think she's going to be an artist or maybe go into trade school. But it's hard to say, right? Because it depends on what their interests are and how they align. And there's so many people that are entrepreneurs that don't fit into the standard like tech entrepreneur kind of space that we normally think about. Like they could be an entrepreneur and like own a trade school or art shop or like own a small business that's a little bit more traditionally defined. If they are an entrepreneur, I would be super excited, and I would be like helping them build a landing page and a logo, and I'm all for it. But if they don't want to be an entrepreneur, that's fine too. I'm open to wherever their journey takes them. It's a fun thought though.
So if we talk about operator equity again, are you investing your own money in it?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the first deals were definitely my own money. And it's like that for a few reasons. One is I'm figuring out how this venture studio / family office is working. And the way to have the most independence is to be investing your own cash and figuring out how to leverage your own finances. But then after that, it depends on the deal. And so if the deal aligns with other people or other entrepreneurs, then it opens it up to have an investment kind of group come together on a deal by deal basis. But to answer your question, yeah, in the beginning, it's definitely my own money.
But you already bring in other people's money in or not yet?
Yeah. So for example, the deal that we're looking at now is probably going to be a joint investment, and it's going to be other people that sold their company to operator equity that are going to be involved in that next deal. So it's happening.
You're recycling money
in a way. And then also I think it might be great to like once we have a pattern in the system and understand exactly what value we're providing to the companies, then it's opening up the door for us to bring on other LPs and other entrepreneurs that have also sold their companies to help out, and in which case operator equity can expand. But what operator equity doesn't have at the moment is a certain mandate for growth. The mandate is we're taking some of the pressure off, and we're making sure that we're providing value to the logos that we already have and the brands that we already have. And so once we have that figured out, then naturally it's going to set up a position for us to raise a fund around some of the stuff that we're doing.
How hard are you working? What's your typical day?
There's some days where it's like 12, 14 meetings, and then there's some days that are more quiet and I'm able to get some work done. I would say I am working probably 70 or 80% the hours I was working as the CEO of SupportNinja. So I'm working a little bit less, but there's high tide and low tide.
So on a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate your fulfillment?
I would say right now I am a 7 on a way to an 8. And I will have to check in after 10 years and understand if I actually am or not.
Fantastic. So what makes it so high?
I think that I really enjoy the people that I'm working with. And so that ties into the community aspect and creative expression. I'm able to have more creativity now, which is pretty enjoyable.
So it's creativity and people.
Yeah. I mean, those are covering some basic human needs, I think, for me. And that's making me feel pretty happy. It's that ability to, I guess, understand what gives you energy and what takes energy. And I'm spending a lot of time on doing things that give me energy, which is fun.
Connor, my last question. How do you want to be remembered?
That's a hard question because on the other hand, like it's amazing how quickly people are forgotten. And so it's a really hard question to answer. I think I want to be remembered by what I provide to my family and my community, my friends. I think that's pretty important to me. I think I want to be remembered as a person that gave more than they took. And facilitated a lot of good times and happiness. So hopefully that's my goal.
I think that's beautiful, and you're on the way to achieve that. It sounds like.
Hopefully, we will see. Good times to be had. But I think that if I was to die tomorrow, I think I have lived a good life and I don't have many regrets at the moment. So I'm pretty happy with how things are.
I want to thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
I enjoyed it too.
And best of luck with all your many new projects.
I appreciate it. And we'll check in at some point and I'll be like, everything is great. Or I'll be like, everything is terrible. So I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you so much, Corda. Have a wonderful day.
100%.